Oh wait,
started with
let's
him.
back up for a second. So you
Okay.
mentioned Dolgapolov. Is that a relative of the current Dolgapolov?
Oh yes, his
Yeah,
father.
is his
Yeah,
father. Okay, and what
yeah,
a
yeah.
yeah. I mean, he's an interesting character. So, just a funny note. I saw Dolgopolov beat Nadal at Indian Wells last year. I was there, and
Uh-huh.
I filmed match point in slow motion, and
Uh-huh.
Dolgopolov mishit every shot. He mishit his serve and four forehands, and that had to have made Nadal crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, so okay, so um,
Yeah, no, you're right though. I mean, he is a unique individual, and his father worked him, gave him a great foundation, and then there was a point where with Dolgopolov, then he sort of stopped, but then took another coach who did a very good job with him, a guy called Jack Reeder, um, because he allowed him to some freedom, some space.
mm,
And so Medvedev was sort of in the same thing. It was good for a short time. That sort of, it's like with perestroika. Once the gates opened, they got freedom. They
mm-hmm.
didn't have that same discipline. It was completely different, and I think that's where when Andre became played much better. He had big contracts and that, and so it's more of a luxurious lifestyle that they were not used to.
Yes, that's a fascinating social study which we don't have time for. We'll do that on a future show, Bob. But
Yeah.
no, that really fascinates me incredibly. That whole the wall coming down thing and how that affected Eastern European players, especially. So now, so why don't we go on to Marin Cilic?
Well, he was 15, nearly 16. Goran sent him to me, and Goran wanted to know what I thought about him. Already a giant compared to me,
Mm.
and he was probably 6'3", 6'4" at that, probably 6'3" at that age, and he came for a week, and then I said to Goran, "Look, I think he's got some potential." Watching him, and then he came back. He went and won European under 16 at that time, and then he came back again and he won another tournament. He trained and then won another tournament, and then that sort of happened. And he then came the next year. He was 16, and I felt that he could be competitive. It'd be interesting to see how competitive he would be against the top five. That's what I thought at that time. After the 3 weeks of training, then he went to Roland Garros and he won Roland Garros Juniors.
Mm.
So it sort of happened along in that way, and he lost to Donald Young, I think, in the finals of the Orange Bowl.
Okay, so let me interject there for a second. So you had been working with him for what period of time?
At the end,
Well, no, right
I
then,
started
no.
with
When
him
he went in and won the French
on
juniors.
10 months.
Okay, and what were I mean? So he exhibited a pretty large measure of growth, or that was just really his coming out and he showed what he could do.
No, he had grown a lot. He was a little bit. His footwork was after one step, because I have this drill where I throw the ball and I'm fairly close to them. I throw the ball, and then in the end I end up playing a game with them, like a match, and doing things. But just to see what it was like, and with one step, it was a complete open stance. I then tried to work on his footwork
Mm-hmm.
and trying to get him to step into the court a
Mm.
little bit more. Also, then a kick serve, being that tall, work on a second serve to make that, to improve that. He was quite consistent, He was very consistent and had big range, of course, for that age. Tried to work on the volley, working then from there on. Yeah, but that's pretty much what happened in the first 10 months.
Mm-hmm. What were some other things that came along in his game that had him, really playing at a high level?
He played, I think, Mahut in the qualifying in Monte Carlo. I think could be the next year or the year after. And you could see that he was exposed to certain things in certain areas. I felt that he needed to change his game to have otherwise he was just defensive and a little bit more aggressive and that. The first few weeks it didn't really work, but then he came back and then he said, yeah, I'm ready.
Mm-hmm.
And then he started to play better. That sort of carried him on until when he played Jesse Levine in the first round of the US Open, and he was just letting the ball drop and he was just rallying, and Jesse was he was up 2 sets to love. Murren got back, fought well, but it felt that the game had to change. So then we worked on stepping much more into the court, having the racket head up a little bit more,
mm-hmm.
and not letting the ball drop. And so he was taking time away from the guys, and then he beat Andy Murray there and lost in the quarterfinals to Del Potro.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that he beat Nadal in Beijing, and he had some good wins, and then semi-finals in Australian Open in 2010. They were, I think, big changes there, and he got to number 9.
Yeah, I mean that's really something, and I mean it's interesting to hear about the transition. And when you said a couple of weeks, that I mean it sounds like during that time maybe people are not as happy as they should be. That you're introducing something and you're facing some resistance from him, and then he kind of comes around.
Yeah, I think that's. Well, I didn't ask him what was the issue, and he just said, I'm ready. And I didn't know what it was. I just thought, okay. I assumed that it was probably something like that, a little bit of doubt and, thinking that the game that he had before, or it could have been something else, but I just, for some reason, I didn't want to ask him go any further on it.
That's interesting. Yeah.
But he definitely, and I think then that I don't know if you want to go further on Murren there, and then he's starting with Goran. You want me to do that, or?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like there's something there to talk about.
Yeah, I think that there was a phase then after Australian Open in 2010. Where he tried to change his game himself, had some advice and that to change the serve and had to hit more aces and winners and that. And so that sort of was then difficult for 9 months, and it wasn't working. And especially when it's difficult when you've got a lot of competition. And you're trying to do it during competition, these sort of changes and that. And then there was a severe drop down in the ranking eventually. And then to put it back together wasn't easy. He went to, I think, 24 or something around there. But then he got back to 11. But there was still that sort of advice from others that he needed to have a big serve and big forehand, which I didn't disagree with. It just putting it together during tournament play isn't that easy. So then.
So here, let me interject. So would you say that it's because it has something to do with his personality, and that maybe he wasn't sort of that aggressive, assertive player that really wanted to take charge of points with his serve or his forehand? He wanted to play more thoughtfully or methodically.
Yes, much more of that. But yes, there's no question about that. But he did try with the serve and with the ground strokes. But many more. How does it fit into the game? That's what is really important. But I think that then when we stopped, and then Goran was working with him, and then he had that time where he was out of the game, it definitely gave him much more opportunity to work on the serve and hitting much more aggressive shots, because he had several months in which to work. I think probably 4 months or something.
Yeah.
In which to do that, which I think definitely helped him. And then he put it all together and had a great US Open.
Yes.
And I think that, yeah.
Absolutely. And that's a period of time that's probably appropriate if you're going to sort of take a shifting your model, taking a mind shift of, okay, I've been this player who hasn't been as assertive as I could be, and now I want to use my weapons to make matches easier for myself. So that's an interesting thing, and I guess you do have to get out of the competitive arena for a short while in order to practice that stuff enough that the muscle memory is there.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the things that you mentioned that's very appropriate for a lot of different changes is muscle memory for all players when they try to make a change.
It's funny, if I had a flash of a story from a high school rivalry that we had, and we had this local school that used to beat my team all the time, and then we turned the tables on them, and we knew that every match that we played against them, they were going to bring a very special effort against us. And we didn't particularly like them a lot. And my kids were pretty nice, pretty mild-mannered, and sometimes wouldn't, use their weapons very well. So I told them this. I said, before every first serve, I want you to think about the F word. And then they took it seriously, and I saw a lot more, because I said, if you don't take charge with these guys, they're going to take charge against you. So
right.
And so it was an interesting lesson for them to learn to channel some controlled aggression into their games. So some might question my use of the vernacular, but the kids understood, and they knew that it wasn't anything more than just playing tennis. So why don't we go on to Ancic?